All right, welcome back to Salt City Counseling. My name's Scott. I'm a licensed therapist here in the beautiful state of Utah if you're new here. And in this video, I have a viewer question having to do specifically with a BPD parent, BPD meaning borderline personality disorder. We're not talking about bipolar disorder. This is a viewer question. I really like viewer questions. They really kind of help me to address what content is going to be useful to people. So if you have a question, you want to send me a question, email is best, scottc@saltcitycounseling.com. I will do my best to remember to put that email in the description below. You can also leave a question in the comments section on one of my videos, but to be honest, there's no guarantee that I will actually see it if you leave it on a comment section. And so this question, again, left in the comment section, there's really kind of two questions. I'll read I'll read the comment that was left. There are a couple of questions in here. Why does everyone have to tiptoe around the BPD parent? Kids can't express themselves. They live in fear. Sometimes they know the bio parent isn't able to care for them the way that they need. Why is it more important to not make the BPD parent upset rather than acknowledge what the child needs? So the first question really is, why does everyone have to tiptoe around the BPD parent? And the second question is, why is it more important to not make the BPD parent upset rather than acknowledge what the child needs? And thank you for your questions. Appreciate it. I'm going to address them both. Frankly, you're asking questions here, especially the second one, that I've kind of been asking and wondering for years. And I feel like there is a big, longer answer. To me, this points to addressing the first question. Why does everyone tiptoe around this person? Frankly, I think it is because as a society and a culture, we've been conditioned for fear. We've been conditioned for people pleasing. We've been conditioned to not do anything that might upset or disrupt other people, or to make splashes or make waves. We live in this culture of trigger warnings and don't clap because that triggers me. And we've been given these messages. We've been conditioned to be afraid. We've been conditioned to alter and change our behavior so that we aren't upsetting to other people. Sadly and unfortunately, not everybody adheres to that set of rules. Well, I don't think anybody should adhere to that set of rules. But when you get certain people who become the ones who are upsettable, then those who are afraid to upset them end up cowering, folding, being afraid, being quiet, just staying back, just falling back into the shadows, and just not wanting to make waves or make splashes. Truly, we live in a society that is conditioned around fear. I find that as a clinician, as a therapist, this is probably one of the biggest barriers in people's lives in general that keeps them from making positive changes in their life. I've been talking about this for years, right? I've noticed that people, they want a better life, they want to feel better, they want better mental health, but they're afraid to do anything different. They're terrified. They're terrified of change. They're terrified of doing anything different. They're terrified to move. They're paralyzed by fear. And really, that's sort of the bottom line, is that people have become completely paralyzed and shut down by their fears. We've been conditioned this way. We really have. And I've worked on it. I really have. I have put so much effort in my life into not giving into that fear conditioning anymore. But we've been conditioned. And I use the term conditioned. That's a psychological term. It's sort of like brainwashing. When you condition somebody's mind, you sort of brainwash them. And we've all been subjected to some sort of conditioning or another, right? Does marketing and advertising condition our minds to want approval from others, to have the next best thing, right? To look good for other people? I think it does. But truly, as a society and as a culture, we have been conditioned for fear, plain and simple. So why does everyone have to tiptoe around the BPD parent? Well, if you ask me, they don't. And I don't. I don't tiptoe around them. In fact, I've become largely unafraid of them, primarily because I realize that the vast majority of the time is that they are a lot of smoke and not a whole lot of fire. And what I've learned is that if I don't show fear, and if I really stand my ground and I assert myself appropriately, and really not just cave into them, but really stand up to them and hold my ground, they tend to back down. I don't tiptoe around them. I don't. And this is sort of one of my frustrations with even trying to help people or coach people through high conflict parenting. Is I've told people, countless people over the years, stop listening to your fear. If you cave into your fear, you're going to cause a detrimental situation to your children. Then they're going to be afraid of that parent. And when people show fear to like a BPD parent or a narcissistic parent, I'm telling you, man, it's like throwing gasoline on the fire. It almost enrages them. It almost emboldens them to just be worse and to get worse. And so I don't think we have to tiptoe them around them at all. I think it's just a matter of social conditioning. I really, really do. And I don't think it really has to go beyond that. But I also think that for whatever reason, our culture and our society does not give nearly enough of a crap about kids. We don't. I make the argument that we generally have a culture and a society that is built on a foundation of child abuse. And maybe here in the United States, it might be slightly better than other parts of the world, because other parts of the world, their child abuse is rampant. Absolutely rampant. Way worse. Much more severe. And I could be wrong on that. I think in the United States, it's a lot more shrouded. I think it's a lot more covert. I think it's a lot more suppressed instead of overt and just out in the open like it is in other places in the world. But we have a culture, we have a species that is built on the foundation of child abuse. We all experience some sort of trauma as children. Some of us endure significant abuse and trauma. And so, but as a culture and as society, we just turn a blind eye to it. Years ago, I was very involved in the teen suicide issue here locally. And I really wanted to create a cause or something that would really give people a purpose, something to get behind, a real worthy cause. Because teenagers around here kill themselves at this ridiculously high rate. It's insanely high around here. And I had to give up on it because of how completely devastating it was to me. Like it really caused me an existential crisis, like in terms of a career. Right, professional existential crisis on why do I do this? Why on earth do I try to put my voice out there to advocate for kids when people just don't give a shit? And believe me, they don't. They say they do, they don't. When it comes to actually showing up, when it comes to actually like putting just putting words into action, they don't care. And I harp on this all the time. This is my crazy old man soapbox. The thing that I rant about the most. It completely drives me nuts. Not completely, but it's astounding and so troubling. People will show up for a rally or a protest for Ukraine, but they won't lift a finger to help children in their own community or try and help steer money from the legislature into the foster system or to better protect kids from child abuse and things like that. They will not lift a finger. And it's what's really frustrating is those Ukrainian protesters, right? They talk like they act like they're better than us. Like, oh, look how virtuous I am, right? Moving on. Moving on. So no, we don't have to tiptoe around them. We don't. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, doesn't mean it's the appropriate thing to do, doesn't mean it's the helpful thing to do. Question number 2. Why is it more important to not make the BPD parent upset rather than acknowledge what the child needs? And I think I've partially already answered this question, but at the same time, I wanted to add this. Family court really has set this precedence. I'm going to blame family court happily. If you haven't seen my previous video on my unfiltered, scathing opinion about family court, it's a mess. It's a disaster, and it's ran by idiots. And they don't care about children's rights. They don't care about protecting children. They don't care about what they care about is protecting parental rights. They will go miles and miles and miles out of their way to ignore child abuse, I'm actually going to do a separate video on this, so stay tuned. Probably record it right after this one and then publish it a few days later. That's my plan anyways. But family court goes miles and miles out of their way to ignore child abuse and neglect and all kinds of things and all kinds of horrible, horrible, egregious things to protect parent rights, especially the rights of mothers. There, I said it. People, this is sometimes a wildly unpopular opinion with certain people, but family court is completely biased towards moms. It just is. And believe me, I've encountered some brutally abusive moms, brutally. And so why is it more important to not make the BPD parent upset? Well, because really, family court has set this precedence. Is because family court ho-hums and hee-haws and what? Sorry, I wasn't listening. Anytime that you bring up any concerns having to do with child abuse or what the child needs or what the child is experiencing. They don't care. They may act like they care. They may try and portray themselves as though they care about what's good for kids and what kids need, and all that. But they don't. And so, one of the reasons why I've kind of backed away from the high conflict thing and doing child custody evaluations and all that is because it's like trying to hold back a tsunami using a bucket. Nobody cares about child abuse. They just don't. Nobody cares about the child's needs. You get a narcissistic or borderline parent who's screaming and making a scene and making everything about them as they want to do, as they have a tendency to do. That's just the nature of the personality disorder. That's the nature of the mental illness, and society just kind of rushes to fawn them, right? And fawn over them and support like these, you're such a victim narratives. And suddenly, right, issues of child neglect or child abuse become about them. So, does that help you feel better? Because I don't feel better. Honestly, like, aside from being a mental health professional, I see myself as a philosopher, as as someone who makes social commentary, and etc. And sometimes I wonder how the U.S. is not in a state of complete revolt. At what point are we just going to realize that the system is failing us miserably in almost every regard and revolt? So, but that's neither here nor there. Again, I said this in my last video about how people they just won't like create a coalition to reform family court. I've encouraged so many people over the years to do that, and they just won't. They won't organize. I don't understand why. I just don't. So here's my question. Maybe some of you can answer it. Why don't people organize to create a coalition to reform family court? Anyways, hopefully that answers those questions. I hope that's not too grim. I just try to tell it how it is, man. I do. And we badly need some changes. But thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you in the next one.